Ready to drive your career, not just ride along? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I'm Simone E. Morris, your host and career strategist, here to give you the roadmap. Each week, we're cutting through the noise with strategies, stories, and insights to get you back in control. Your career clarity starts right here. Welcome to this week's episode of the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. On today's episode, we have the inspiring Jackie Grice. Jackie is a dynamic speaker, best-selling co-author, and CEO who built a multi-million-dollar transportation company and now empowers others through her soulful business strategies at launching deeper enterprises. Her journey, marked by an entrepreneurial success and personal growth, fuels her message of living a limitless life driven by purpose. Now, everybody, you know this show is about being in the driver's seat, so I'm already excited to talk to Jackie. Let's get ready to learn from a true career owner. Please welcome Jackie Grice to the show. Jackie, welcome.
Hi, how are you guys? Glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, we are excited to hear more about you. I shared your bio, so tell us a little bit more about what you're currently doing.
So, oh my goodness, doing all the things. So, we own a transportation company, my husband and I, and we are people movers, not freight movers. So, we move people, military, government, public and private sector. So whenever you see those large charter buses transporting schools and universities, that's us. So we do that. And then during COVID, I started I was sort of forced into it, but started doing personal development and business strategy. So I wear two hats in that regard.
Awesome. So let's start with the truck driving space. How did you get there? I mean, what were your desires when you were growing up? What did you want to do with your life? What was your aspiration?
Absolutely. So, to be honest, I always wanted to be a judge. So that would mean that I would go to law school, but I actually went into engineering. So went into mechanical engineering. And I did that, ended up getting married, and my husband wanted to start a charter bus company. So that was a little bit, that really wasn't in the cards for me. I hadn't really thought of that, but I did grow up in a family of entrepreneurs. So my mother and my father, he worked a 9 to 5, but also had a upholstery business. So I grew up watching business since I was, born. And it was just really in my DNA. So even though I was, an engineer, I really had the desire to own my own business. So when my husband approached me with this, I hadn't seen that as the business, but I loved it. We ended up starting it and grew it into a pretty nice transportation Company.
That's awesome. So how do you use the engineering part of your expertise? Is that still around? Because a lot of times we go to college. So for example, I went to college for retail management. I want to be a buyer. I'm a coach and trainer and speaker now, and I don't really do anything with that part of my degree. So I'm curious about the engineering and if you continue to leverage that expertise.
Yeah, I believe I really do. Now that I do, business development, coaching as well, and business strategy, I think that engineering and analytical mind really helps me with organizations. And so I look at it as an extension, just different ways we've been able to grow our business. I attribute that to a lot of the analytical part of my brain that I use to do those things. So I think it goes hand in hand, especially in helping people strategize and grow their business.
Gotcha. So was there a moment in your career where you're doing two different things and you mentioned or it was mentioned in the bio that this is a multi-million-dollar business and you also have a second business going at the same time. Was there ever a time in your career where you realized that you were in the driver's seat and just taking control, being very intentional with your career? What was that moment?
Yeah, I think to be honest, there, when I had this encounter where during COVID, when our business was pretty much shut down because no one was getting on charter buses during COVID, there was the mandate you couldn't be within so many 6 feet of another person. So pretty much shut our business down. And I spent 2 days in silence. And I was instructed to do that by a mentor of mine and spent 2 days in silence. And through that, I realized that there was this other part of me that I hadn't developed. And it was that part that the business strategy sort of coaching part. So during that time, I became super intentional about developing that part of who I was as a person. Yeah, so it really came at a moment when one business was sort of shut down a little bit, and it forced me to develop this other part of me that I didn't really know quite existed.
I'm curious about the silence. Now, I have taken a sabbatical from my corporate career. I've taken time out just to think strategically and
Yeah.
connect with my purpose. But I'm hearing you say you spent 2 days in silence. Was that facilitated silence, or you just sequestered yourself in silence and listened to your inner voice? Tell us more about that. I'm curious.
Yeah, so I probably a year or two before this just practiced silence. It was this group, maybe an hour away from me, and you go to this. It was almost like a sanctuary. It was a church they had converted into this sanctuary, and you leave your phone in the car,
No.
and you spend like from 9 o'clock in the morning to 3 o'clock, you spend that whole day in silence. You ate lunch in silence. And
What?
you really, yeah,
You don't talk to anybody. You just sit
yeah,
there and listen. And
you
yeah, I
you
bet
walk
that your mind wanders first, and then it sort of settles down as a meditative. That's fascinating.
Yes, yes. So if whether you're spiritual or not, or believe in a higher power, it's really about connecting because we're always talking. We're
Yep.
always, even if we're spiritual and we have, pray to God and we're saying,
Mhm.
hey, we're talking,
Yep.
but this is really a time where you just listen. And they do give you a prompt. You may ask a question. So during these 2 days of silence, the question I was asking was, what is my purpose and what was the strategy? And in those 2 days, it it got answered. And whether it's your inner voice, however you frame that, but it is really getting in touch with yourself and really hearing, but it's a focus. It isn't something like, to tell people to practice silence is usually the last, people are like, be silent. And you were silent for 2 days. Yeah, it took time. So by the time my mentor had instructed me to do this, I knew the power of being silent.
Okay.
And in those 2 days, it literally transformed my life. So, yeah.
That is amazing. And so listeners, we will add that as a resource for this show. And so you came out of that experience and you started a new business.
Yes. Yeah. I completely started an entire new business from those 2 days. It's
And it continues today with the transportation company and your own coaching strategy business as well.
Absolutely. And it even gave me insight on things that I needed to do to transform my transportation company. So it was twofold. It literally, I started a whole new business, but in addition to that, I, thought of different innovative ways that I hadn't thought of. And I think a lot of times when we're in our head and we're moving, especially as career driven people, we're constantly moving, going to the next. This really allowed me to sit down and to listen
Mm.
as to what those next steps were. Um, Instead of me just doing it, we talk about being in the driver's seat, but it sort of allowed me to sit and see where I was going from a different perspective.
Mm. I love that. Now that you have that knowledge and you have the knowledge of two different businesses, successful businesses, think about your formula for owning your career. So I always like to ask guests, what is your formula? What are the key ingredients that's necessary to really thrive in your career?
Oh, yeah. I would say purpose plus strategy equals, driving your career. If you have that purpose, you really know what that is. I call it what's in your hands. What is it that you have in your hands? And um, whether you've been doing this all of your life, whether this is something you're great at doing, but then adding strategy to that, I think
Mhm.
is the key.
Well, tell us a little more about strategy. Strategy can be a difficult skill for listeners or other people to pick up that skill. And some people are better at it than others. So give us some tips that you learned along the way that's really helpful to tune into strategy.
Oh, yeah. So, what I really like to do is it's almost like you're working backwards, right? So, I say, this is what I want to accomplish. And I usually do my strategy in four quadrants or four quarters, right? So, I say, this is what I want to accomplish. And these are the steps that I need to, so I strategize the steps and then what do I need to do in each step. So it's sort of just working backwards, and I try to set I strategize in quarters. What I don't complete in one quarter, I bring it over to the next quarter. But I only use maybe 3 to 4 things that I want to accomplish, and I just that's sort of the strategy that I use. And during this process, I evaluate weekly. So, for example, if it is to complete, say if you're writing a book, for example, you want to write a book and you say, okay, I want to do this in 6 months or a year. I break that into quarters, and then at the each week I say, how did I do this week? Did it move me closer to my goal,
Mhm.
or do I need to tweak something? So I evaluate each of my steps weekly to see, okay, I need to do more of this or less of this.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What you're sharing reminds me of this book that I'm familiar with. It's called The 12-Week Year. Have you ever heard of that book?
I have not, but it's,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah.
the similar concept, and that 12 weeks equates to a year. So your goals are very concentrated to the 12-week, and you're able to accomplish so much more because you're seeing 12 weeks as a year. So as you were talking about that intentionality with tracking your progress, obviously action, I didn't hear you say that in your formula, but I suspect that there's a lot of action that needs to go along with the purpose and the strategy in order to get the results that you have seen over the years.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean and that is part of the strategy is you have to take action.
Mhm.
Um, and then just evaluate that. Did I, what stopped me from completing this task? What did I need to do more of? Because a lot of times we look and we're making the same mistakes, but because we're not looking at what works and what doesn't work, we continue to do the same thing over and over. And even though we're taking action, we're doing action that really isn't moving you closer, if
I love
that
that.
makes sense. You see?
Yeah, it makes complete sense. I am a
Yeah.
former project manager, and lessons learned is a big activity with projects where you do a lessons learned and then you use it for another project, like you're saying, to make sure you
Yeah.
don't make the same mistake. So I'm on board with that approach as well. What are
Yeah.
some resources, Jackie, that have been helpful to you as you have navigated and help you to really level up and be successful? What's really helped? You talked about the investing in the silence, and that was,
Yes.
it sounds like it was game changing. What else has worked for you?
I tell people all the time, you should really invest in yourself,
Mm.
right? Whether it's a coach, whether it's therapy, people, a lot of times there's the stigma with therapy. But in my years of coaching, most of it is mindset, and, a lot of times if we're not um, self-aware and we don't realize the things that are hindering us or stopping us or blocking us, those things can prevent movement. But those are things that I tell people: invest in yourself, get a coach. And I don't say that because I'm a coach,
Yep.
but I know the power of having a coach. It has caused me to make quantum leaps. A good
Yes.
coach, a mentor. I tell people have a coach, a mentor, and a sponsor.
Yes. Break it
Those are
down. Break it
things.
down. I'm on board. Absolutely. Absolutely. And the
Yes.
therapist that you mentioned, because that is also game changing. You're mixing the key ingredients there.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Those are
absolutely.
very, very helpful. When I think about the power of coaching, I wish that I knew about coaching when I was younger. I didn't find coaching till later in my life, but
Yeah,
I can fully see how transformative it is because I, through my coach, became a coach. And I
yeah.
love the work that I do. I love to see my clients transform. So I am co-signing the comment about coaching, therapy, mentor. I love, love, love that you brought up sponsor. So talk to me a bit more about sponsor because I do talk about sponsorship on this show.
Yeah, so the sponsor I'm talking is a person that they're in rooms or
Mm.
spaces that you're not in, right? And they are people that may recommend you or bring your name up. So always having someone that's an advocate for you, because there are a lot of places, a lot of opportunities I've been able to walk into and take advantage of, but it wasn't because that I knew the people. It was someone that knew me and they were in a space or a room and they said, hey, you should check out Coach Jackie B, or she does leadership training, and it has opened doors for me. So that is so important as we surround ourselves with people. I remember a friend of mine said to me, she said, I know all these millionaires, but I'm still broke.
Mm.
I
Mm.
think, your worth is your network. And if
Yes,
your
I've heard that.
network is not helping you level up, then I think that, it's great to have a lot of people that have a lot of influence. But if they're not in some way moving you and pulling you along, then you have to reevaluate that circle. Yes.
That is an excellent point. I am going to counter that point with the comment if you are not asking your network for support. So, talk to us about how you formulate the ask because there's a lot of selling that goes on, and I don't think people realize how much selling goes on in being an entrepreneur. But even if you're in a corporate space or you work for someone else, there's quite
Yeah.
a bit of selling that's a skill that needs to be honed in on and is really game changing so you can have this influential network, but if you are not exhibiting courage to say, hey, Jackie, could you help me? Here's what I'm trying to do. can you connect me to so and so, or can you help me in whatever way, then, I think it's a two-way street.
Absolutely. And it does. It takes a lot, but I think a lot of it, it's also the people that you're connected to. Because I'm a person that if I see that you have a quality or a gifting that someone else can use, I will usually, even if you didn't ask me to do that, I usually just automatically just think of ways that I can help pull people up. So the one thing is you kind of want to be around people that are like that,
Yes.
because there are some people, even if you say, hey, connect
Yes.
me,
Yes,
they're
yes.
just not that person,
That's
right?
right. Yes and
And
yes.
we all know those people. It's like, hey, I do that, you didn't mention it. The other thing is, I think it's important to let people know what you do.
Yes.
So like a lot of people know, yeah, I have a charter bus company, I do coaching, but we also, my husband has a driving school, and we set up cruises. So a lot of times people don't know those things. So it's up to you to also let people know, I do this and that. And, I speak, I do this, so sort of letting people know all that you do. Um, but again, also being with those people and connected with those people that are sharers, that love to share information.
Yes, I love
Yeah.
everything that you're saying. Talk to us about risk, because you are dabbling in multiple spaces. You just shared some additional opportunities, entrepreneurial opportunities, spaces that you are involved in, and that has to come with some appreciation for risk. You've already told us the guidance to bet on ourselves, and I believe wholeheartedly in that. Tell us how you contemplate risk and how you think about it and how you use that to navigate your career.
So when you say risk, I break that down a little bit for me so I make sure I answer that the right
Yeah.
way.
Well, you have to decide. So here's an example. I had to decide back in 2013 if I was stepping out from corporate America and starting my own business. Now, that is a risk that I had to think about, because I was moving away from a steady paycheck,
Yeah.
benefits, and there was not a lot of certainty. Sometimes with a 9 to 5 employment, we can think that that is stability. So for me, to move into the entrepreneurial space, there was a bit of risk involved. So that's what
Yes.
I mean. As you decided, I've got this trucking company and, or sorry, transportation company. I need to think about this new business. And now you're adding on to it the driving school, and the additional things. How do you think about it and decide to go forward?
Yeah. So very good question. Thank you for that
No problem.
elaboration on that. Yes. I think it is, I look at it as the risk of not doing it. What do I lose by not doing it? Because at the end of the day, if you don't try it, if you don't step out there, whether it is another job or a higher level position or going into entrepreneurship, the risk of not doing it to me is a higher, it weighs higher. The other piece of that is there's this great book by Dan Martell called Buy Back Your Time.
Mm.
And it talks about hiring people not to necessarily scale your business, but to buy back your time. So it's really important to bring people on board that can help you mitigate your risk. To, if I'm still working a 9 to 5 and I want to start in this entrepreneurial space, to sort of mitigate that risk is to have someone, maybe a virtual assistant, to start to assist me where I can still do both at the same time, as opposed to just quitting the job and going into the entrepreneurial space.
Yeah.
So doing things like that, getting people to assist you while you're building this over here, I think helps you mitigate the risk.
Gotcha. Well, how do you
Yeah.
balance all these things, Jackie? You've got a lot of things. I'm a mom as well. I've got a
Yeah.
lot of things going on myself, but you talked about quite a bit. How do you balance it all or integrate? Let me use the word integrate. How do you
Yes.
integrate it all?
Yes. Oh my goodness. And I think again, it's just bringing on people to help. Delegating is so important. I couldn't do everything that I'm doing without a good team of people. And that's a whole thing because people these days, it's different, especially I've seen after COVID, but um, just having people to help you, having my office staffed
Yep.
so that I can do this other stuff. And then having a team to help me, with say social media. And it didn't, as I'm trying to get more into it and as I continue on this path, it's just, almost flying the plane as you build it, so
Yeah.
it's
Learning
I'm
on the
doing
job.
it and I'm building it at the same time. Yeah.
Yes,
So
yes, totally get it. Awesome. So if you had to come up with a title for your career body of work, everything that you've done and the lessons you've learned along the way, what might the title be?
it would definitely be what my philosophy is, launching deeper. That's what
And
it
tell
would
us a
be.
little bit more about what launching deeper means.
Launching deeper means going beyond what you feel you have the capacity to do. It's going into that place of potential. It's, everything that you have in you, but say to the an exponential power, right? And that is that thing. It is just utilizing your potential. That untapped potential is what I call launching deeper. So
Mm, mm.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And it does sound like you had the visuals or you saw it modeled from your parents, just what could be possible as well.
Yes, absolutely. Just, seeing them, and they grew up in an era they didn't have formal education, formal training, but the potential and the gifting to do something really great. And I watched that. I watched a father that didn't have any formal training. Uh, in, Both my parents did not graduate from high school.
Mm.
So to see them accomplish, I have nine, so it's nine of us. So they afforded us all the opportunity to go to college, and you look at that, and it was quite amazing what they were able to accomplish. So I saw that daily.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing. What a story of grit and
Yeah.
inspiration and look at what you're doing for your family and the legacy and you showing what's possible.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like I have definitely taken the baton.
Mhm.
My parents are deceased, but I feel like they passed this baton to me,
Yes.
and I am trying to run with it and make them proud.
I am sure they are very proud of you, and we are thankful that you gave us a bit of your time to show up on the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. Can you tell our listeners if there is a way to stay connected with you if they'd like to do so, Jackie?
Oh, yes, I would absolutely love that. And my website is Jackie B. Grice. And my Instagram and all of the socials are Jackie B. Grice. You can find me on YouTube. I love it's under Launching Deeper with Jackie B. Grice. So I'd love for your listeners and viewers to definitely connect with me, follow, share, and just spread the word. I'd really appreciate that.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we'll be sure to add that into the show notes for listeners as well. And Jackie, thank you so much for being a guest on the Power of Owning Your Career podcast.
Thank you, Simone. I really appreciate this opportunity. It was great.
Yes, yes, indeed it was. I
Yeah.
enjoyed it as well. Thank you so much. That's it for today's empowering episode. I'm Simone E. Morris, and I want you to remember that you are indeed the architect of your career. Share this episode if it sparked something in you. Subscribe wherever you listen, and find more resources at SimoneMorrisEnterprises.org. Keep practicing career ownership, and I'll be right here with you next week for more transformation.